In this video, I'm going to go over relationships. Relationships is basically how we relate in Bubble one table to another table, right? Here we have contacts and organizations, how we can build relationships between these two tables. And that's really the key that differentiates a Bubble database. And one of the core features there is that it's a relational database. And we're going to go over exactly what that means. So in summary, the one difference between Excel and a Bubble relationships is that Excel relationships are per cell, right? Like I can relate this cell and I can say this is equal a specific cell on the organizations table, right? And then that way there's a relationship between a cell, which is like a column to row number here, right? There's like a X and Y number that reaches this relationship. In Bubble, unlike Excel, the relationship is not for a specific cell. The relationship is per row, right? So if I want to reference, for example, here in organization, when I do equal, from Bubble's perspective, I need to equal the entire row. So what I'm saving is actually the 4 unique ID, which would be like the row unique ID of this organization. So from Bubble's perspective, they're basically saying if I want to link to Chair B&B, I'm going to save 4 over here. I may show you Chair B&B or whatever the name is, but I'm linking to the entire row. So the reference is to the entire row rather than a specific cell in a table. And that's the basis for how relationships work in Bubble. This may not make sense to you right now. We're going to dive into some examples and show what that looks like in actuality. Okay, let's look at this basic example of how we can use relationships to build a full database. This is like the first video out of the series of videos I'm making where we can build like a full, almost complete database for an app. So let's say where I'm a venture capital firm. A venture capital firm, if you don't know, we takes money from big investors and then takes that money and invests it, pools it all together into one big pool, and then takes portions of that money and invests it in promising startups or small companies that they think will have a big successful outcome like Airbnb or Uber, which were funded by a venture capital firm. And as a venture capital firm, I want to create a platform where I can see all the companies I invested in, all the documents they provided, and all the contacts that work for those companies. That way, like if I have a set of a lot of companies, I can just go into an online portal and see like that company with all their documents and all their employees, and I can see which employees left or when, what they are doing. And it's just a great way to aggregate information and maintain my venture capital firm to be like really operate well, having like a clear set of information, a CRM where everything lives. And I know there are venture capital firms that actually have platforms like this. So you as a Bubble developer or app developer can make the same. So let's dive into the example. Okay, so let's start with the 2 main data types we want, and that is basically we want a portal where we can see all the organizations and then the people who work at those organizations. So for that, we can create 2 tables, right? One with organizations with the name, maybe the details. Maybe we want to put like amount invested. So how much did we actually as a firm invest in these companies or something like that? I don't know. Maybe we need a bunch of different other columns about it. But we have Acme, Corp, Microsoft, and Airbnb. Really interesting companies here. But then we want to know who is actually working there. And there's many ways of doing this. For me, because we want to save a lot of data on each person that works there, right? We want their email, their phone number, like things like that. We don't just want to put like employees, right? Because then we would just have a list of James, Jack, etc. But we don't have any information about them other than their name. We want to save their email and other things like that, which is why we probably need like a separate table for that. And that's what I call contacts, which would be like employees. And over here, I have the name, the last name. And this is where the key comes in, is the current company. In Excel, what I did is I just said, okay, equals organization A2, and that's the A2 is Acme Corp, and it shows their name. And the relationship is from cell to cell. This is what I would do in Excel. From Bubble's perspective, the best way to create that relationship is actually what Bubble would do is you would put a relationship to the unique ID. Now, you can build like a data type. You can switch the type of this column. In Bubble, there's different types to become company. So we can actually, or organization. So we can actually reference, we know that this column always has to reference an organization. And what it's doing behind the scenes is it's saying, okay, I have to get a unique ID, which is like in Excel, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. In Bubble, it's like a long list of numbers. And I'm just going to put, I have to get in this column a unique ID of an organization. That way there's a clear reference to an organization. And when I retrieve the data later in my app, I always have a clear relationship between a user, a contact, and an organization. There's always a relationship. That's like the most basic type of relationship that happens. And let's jump into Bubble and create this basic relational database. If you're new to this, is your first relational database. Very exciting. Let's see how it looks in Bubble and how we actually build out that relationship. So now we're in Bubble, and let's create, again, a table like we did in other videos I've recorded. And since we're in video 4, we're going to add 4 here, and let's create a table for contacts. And go through this quickly. We have first name, text, last name, also a text. And what else do we have here? We have the company, but until we actually create the table for companies, that table doesn't exist, so we can't reference it. So let's create 4, because again, we're in the 4th lesson of this course. And let's create organization, or I'm going to call it company so I don't confuse everyone. Company. And let's now go back to the contacts table and let's add a relationship here. So over here we have current company, and let's add that in as a column or field here. And now what we can do when field type, we can actually reference that table of company, right? That company table we just created. And basically what it's saying is you can only put a unique ID of a company in this field, in this column, right? A field corresponds to a column. And that's what Bubble is basically, that's what we're defining here, right? So now we have current company is a reference to that table with companies. Awesome, cool. Now let's finish this up and add in, fill out the company. Let's call these companies instead of organization so we don't get confused. And let's go back to company and add a name. And details. Awesome. So now we have the table set up exactly how we want them. Okay, now let's go to our app data and actually create records in like Bubble's Excel type view, right? This is the view of actually the data and the rows that we have, right? We set up the columns in the table. Now let's add in the rows or the records in Bubble terms. So first, let's create a company, right? A company just has details, a name, right? So let's call this Corp, and the description, a family company. We're gonna take our example literally, right? And then let's add a contact that is related, again, related to this company, right? So let's go to contacts table. Let's add a record. And let's say the first name is John, James, and the company is, how do we insert the company, right? If I put in 23 here and I click create, the current company is empty, right? And you can see there's like a search box here. So I don't know if I put in Acme, nothing comes up. But you see what is coming up. This is a unique ID. Okay, so this is like Bubble is saying, okay, instead of saving like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? In Excel, what we're saving is 1, 2, Acme, the unique ID or the unique record number here is 2, right? Bubble instead generates like 10 numbers, right? So if I type in Acme, it's showing me like this huge string of numbers. And basically for each row in Bubble, they generate this random set of, I don't know, what is it, 10, 15 numbers. And so there's always a very unique identifier, what they call, for each record in Bubble. And so in Bubble, what I need to say is I need a reference to, I need a unique ID here to tell me which company this contact is related to. You can't just put in the name, etc. So let's do that. So if I type in Acme, I only have one company, so I know that that's Acme Corp. But if I had multiple companies, I would see lots of unique IDs. And obviously, this is not how you would add data in Bubble. This is more of an example of just to give you reference of how records are created. So if I put in the unique ID and then I click Save, I can see that now there is a current company that it's referencing, and that company has to be Acme Corp. Now, in Bubble, what you can do is you can actually show, instead of showing the unique ID, you can show any one of the columns as the actual display data or what in the underlying Bubble is always saving the unique ID of a relationship. If you have a contact named John or Jake and you're linking it to a company, it's basically taking the unique ID of that record of that company. So the company, right? If I look at this unique ID, of every Bubble record has. It ends with 300. And if I go to contacts and I look at this unique ID, it also ends with 300. It's the same exact number. But what you can do is display to yourself so you know what the relationship is to which company, any one of the columns. So I can display the name or the details just for my visual preference. And you can do that by clicking primary fields. And if I go to company, I can choose details, name, or these Bubble default fields or columns. Let's say details, for example. Here I'll see a family company. And if I change that and I click name, what it's showing me is Acme Corp, right? Now I can see a visual of the actual relationship. We can see that it looks exactly like our contacts row, but it's just a little bit tweaked in how Bubble saves that relationship in a unique ID rather than it's linking to an entire row based on the unique ID rather than a specific cell, which was what happens in Excel or Google Sheets. Cool. Awesome. So we got that first example. Now let's take it one step further. All right, so we have the contacts on the company. So if I'm on my online Bubble app that's created for my venture firm, I can see the company, the name, the details, and all the contacts or slash employees that work there. But I also need some more information, right? Because I'm a VC firm and I need the company to send me documents, right? Tell me what's their revenue, what's their cash flow, what are they like, where are they currently at? Are they burning through my investor money or are they generating profitability? Where are they at? And they do that via sending some documents. Documents is a table, right? For each document, you probably need like a name, a description of what the document does, a link to a specific file that actually has all the details. And yeah, and you need to link it to a specific company, right? There's a company, Acme Corp, Microsoft, is probably going to have hundreds and hundreds of files, right? If it's Airbnb, which is a thriving startup, they're sending hundreds of documents. So we can't really put it on this table. It makes sense to have a different table because there's so many. They may have thousands of documents. And if you look at their biggest competitor, Airbnb, if you go on their investor relations website, you'll see hundreds of documents, and each one with a description, a name, and like a big file. And so that's why we created another table to be able to show those documents. But we also need to tie it back to the organization, right? So, for example, Acme Corp has monthly earnings, monthly cash flow report, two financial documents. They have the file, but it's linked to an organization. So we can always tie a document to a specific organization. And that's, again, a relationship. Okay, so let's see how we implement this type of thing in Bubble too. So let's add a table. Let's go back to data types, and we're going to add a data type, which is going to be 4 because we're on the 4th video, and company documents. And we're going to create, and then quickly create the name, filing date. So name is text, name of the document. Filing is when it was sent over or created. And then, well, filing date would be when it I don't know. You can put a date, whatever is important, and that's a date. And then file, the actual file, the document, and that's going to be a file. We're uploading some sort of Excel or PDF or something like that. And then, this is again where it gets interesting. We're also tying this to a company or organization. We're calling it company. We can search, we can find that we're linking it to the company table, not to the company documents table. Actually, we should probably, for confusion purposes, let's just call this documents instead of company documents. We can see that company ties to the company table, right? We're linking it to a company. Each document is linked to a company. Now let's dive into the app data and look how that is displayed, right? If we want to add a document, we can click new entry. It's like an Excel view, and we can literally create the same thing. Let's create monthly earnings. And the filing date is, what do we say here? 10/29/22. So month 10/29/2022, hour 10:30 a.m. Okay, maybe that's when we uploaded it. And then we're going to upload a file for that. And when we click create, the only thing we're missing here is actually the company. Now in this case, it's not showing me the unique ID. Why is it not showing me the unique ID? Is because I changed the primary field, right? So in the 2 minutes ago, I went and let's just create this for now. I can see that the company is in. I changed the primary field. So what it's showing you is like the name. It's allowing you to attach companies to this document via their name. So we can attach Acme Corp. I can't just type anything I want here. If I do that, it'll just empty. I need to actually choose a specific organization that's linking to. And again, in the back end, it's adding that unique ID of this company or the unique row ID of the company. If you would look at it Excel, it would have in Bubble, if you looked at it in this Excel format, it would have this 10-digit number over here instead of the 2. And what we're doing is we're saving that on the document itself in the organization column or the organization field. In our case, the company field. If we click save, see that this document is now tied to Acme Corp. Cool. All right. Hopefully you're starting to see how these 3 tables are now tied together to start building an app. Okay. So now imagine a profile page on an app where you can see a company, right? So for the app for this VC firm, venture capital firm, you can see the company, the name, the description. Then you can go ahead and scroll down and see all the contacts for that company, right? Because they're related, and all the employees. And then you can also see all the company documents. Now we have a really good CRM kind of set up for this venture capital firm, or at least the database structure ready for them to go to build an interface for. Now I'm going to add a bonus layer. Let's say we want to see all the contacts that we have, but we also want to see their historic work information. So it could be that Jack worked for Airbnb and then worked for Acme Corp, and they transitioned between 2 of our companies. Or they worked for Acme Corp and then worked for Microsoft, right? And we want to track and be able to go on a user profile. Before I was like, company profile, we can see all the contacts and we can see all the documents. let's say we wanted to go to a user profile and see their entire work history, similar to LinkedIn, right? When you can go in and see the kind of work history, but this is an internal tool for this venture capital firm. And they want to see maybe there's people that have moved between their specific companies that they invested in, right? They may have moved from Airbnb to Microsoft to Acme Corp. And so let's think of how we can do that table using relationships in the Bubble database, right? So think about it for a second, and then I'll go over how we can do that. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to really think about it. But basically, the way we can do that, the best way to do it is create a table, which would be the contact employment history. So over here, we can only see the current company they're in, but we don't see the historic company they're in. The way we can save now is we can create a table that will save their entire employment history. And the way we do that is we go and we can essentially have a contact column, which is a relationship to the contacts. This is a bit of a level up from basic relationships. We can have a company column, which is a relationship to the company table. And then we can have a start date and end date for when they work there. So then we can see that John, in this example, was at Airbnb from these two dates. And we can see that they're currently at Microsoft and they don't have an end date. So we can see that we can see a timeline of where they worked and when they worked at our specific companies as a venture capital firm building a platform, right? We kind of capturing the relationship between contact and company in a separate table so that we can open up a contact profile page and see their entire employment history with dates. So if you don't understand this, it's okay. This is like a bit of a layer ahead, but I'm just going to show you quickly how I implement this in Bubble. Actually, stop here and try to get this into a Bubble table and then pause the video, try to do it yourself, and then I will come back and do it with you. Okay, hopefully you were able to put this into a Bubble data type or a Bubble table. And let's see how that looks to us. Okay, so let's go into Bubble and create a new table. So we're going to go to data types and create a new data type, which is a new table, as we would say in Excel. And let's say for and contact company history. Okay, cool. And let's create that. And then over here, now we're going to have two different relationships, one to the contact and one to the company. This is where it gets interesting. Get a contact relationship. Let's scroll down and go to our contacts table. That's what we're relating to, and click create. And then the company relationship, we're going to go to company and search it, or we can scroll down and scroll to 4, company. Now we have these two relationships, these two columns, right? Contact and company that relate to these two tables. But we're going to add context on that relationship is dates, right? Start date, when they work there. That's going to be a date. And then end date, when they ended working there. And that's also going to be a date. So now we're capturing that relationship between these companies. And again, just visualize in your head a profile page where you have a visual of a contact, and then you scroll down and you see the contact and the company they worked at, kind of their work history within all the companies that this venture capital firm has, right? So it gives you good context on each contact where they worked in the past. You could probably run a lot of analytics on that data, right? So let's go and just bring us back to Bubble, go to app data and create a relationship between contact and company. So over here, go to app data, go to contact company history. We want to shorten this in a real app. It's a long name. And let's link to first a company, Acme Corp, a contact. See, it's showing the unique ID. Now, the way we can actually solve so it doesn't show the unique ID, even though it's saving it, again, let's go back and go to primary fields and then go to our contact. And what we want to show, not one contact, we want from our fourth video contact, right? For contact. And we want to show the first name, right? That's what we want to search for when we're building that relationship. And so let's create Acme Corp. And the contact is going to be John, right? Acme Corp. And the start date maybe like 10/30/2022, 10 a.m., 9 a.m. That's usually when work starts. 9 a.m. Cool. And the end date, let's say they're still working there. They don't have don't have an end date. They're still there. They're still working at Acme Corp. And click create. Now we have our first relationship captured of work history between a contact and a company. Congratulations. You've officially built your first relational database. It's like almost like a full app database design for a real app, right? Think of a venture capital firm. This is how I, as a Bubble developer, would design the database for that type of platform. And now we're really at a pivotal point in this video where you can really start imagining how powerful a relational database is in terms of the apps you can build, right? We literally in 10, 15 minutes built out a database for a really awesome portal for a venture capital firm. And I think the sky's the limit. Thank you again for watching this video. Yeah, I'm excited to see what everyone who's following along and learning about Bubble is going to build.